Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Very happy to be back at my home base. Anthony also here in Minnesota. I'm back from the Stanley Cup Final where the Carolina Hurricanes 1-6, like I predicted in the Athletic before. And man, just as good it was so very clear, Anthony, throughout the Stanley Cup Final that the Carolina Hurricanes were getting better every single game and the Vegas Golden Knights were not. Carolina absolutely relentless after running through the Eastern Conference. And it just felt like Vegas ran out of gas. And man, it was a heck of a final, though.
It sure was. And it was the absolute opposite of what we saw from Vegas in every other series, where they seemed to get better and better as the series went on. Remember against Anaheim, it looked like the Ducks might be able to give them a battle, and then all of a sudden Vegas just asserted their will. Utah, same thing. Colorado, they kind of dominated from the start, but even as that series got on, it became more and more clear Vegas was going to win. And in this series, it was the opposite, where I really felt like Vegas probably should have been up 3-0. And when they weren't, you just kind of felt like at some point that was going to come back to bite them. And the last 2 games of the series in particular, Carolina just so clearly the better team. And the better team won the series. I think they were the best 2 teams made it to the final, which is the way it's supposed to work. Vegas was, I think, the best team in the West in the playoffs, and Carolina clearly the best team in the NHL. And it was good. I'm not a big Carolina fan necessarily, but I enjoyed seeing a guy that was so determined and so committed to that his style, talking about Rod Brind'Amour, that the way they were playing, that his style, that their style could win after all these years of saying, well, they're a great regular season team, but they'll never get over the hump playing this way. They need this. They need this. They need a scorer. And they tried Gensel. They tried Rantanen. I mean, the number of things that they tried, and yet they just kind of stuck to their guns. He believed that the way they were playing was a way you could win. And in the end, they finally did. And, we talk so many times about all you can do in the NHL, because it's such a fickle game in the playoffs, is put yourself in a spot where you're one of the teams to beat, and then have it be the year where things go your way. You have to stay healthy. They were healthier than their opponents most of the way. You have to get some breaks. They got some breaks along the way. You have to get goaltending. They got the better goaltending, particularly in the final. And but they put themselves in a spot to be one of the elite. And then this was the year for them where they got those things to go their way. Their goalies were better than Carter Hart in the final.
Yeah, without a doubt. Brandon Busty was better than Carter Hart in the final. Carter Hart had statistically the worst final maybe ever. Gave up 4 more.
Well, Minnesota fans will remember that it was the worst since John Casey when the Minnesota North Stars got beat in the final.
Yeah. Only goalie in history to give up 4 goals. In the first 5 games, obviously gave up 2 in the final game. And then, to your point, lowest save percentage since John Casey in a 4 goalie that went 6 at least in the final. Brandon Busty came on. What a story. This is a journeyman that's, been roaming around the minors since his college career, and comes into this series. Obviously had an unbelievable regular season where he was 31-6-2. Eric Tulsky did a phenomenal job during the Olympics, signing him to a 3-year deal at 1.9. Didn't play in the playoffs until Game 3 when Freddie Anderson was pulled. Turned out he tweaked his knee in Game 2 of that series. Came out, almost won that Game 4 when the Carolina Hurricanes rallied back from 4-0 down to tie it in forced overtime before that fluky final goal by Shea Theodore, but then goes on and wins the final 3 games of the series. Sorry, that was Game 3. Then goes out and wins the final 3 games of the series, all the games that he started. And what was really tremendous about this series is just the way that Carolina was able to come back in games 2 and 4 and almost did it in Game 3. And this was a postseason where no lead was safe by any team. We saw Carolina blow the 3-0 lead. We saw Vegas blow the 4-0 lead. Carolina blew a couple leads in this series. But Vegas faded in Game 2. That's a game that they'll regret. And they get faded in Game 4. That's a game they will regret. And they just let them off the hook in Game 4. And when they went to Carolina in Game 5, there was a sense of doom around that organization. You just felt it everywhere you went that they to blow that game 4, it was just a massive, massive loss to them.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about that they looked like they ran out of gas, I think it was mentally as much as physically, where I think they felt like they could have been up 3 games to none. Then when they let Carolina off the hook in game 4 with a chance to really grab a stranglehold on the series and be up 3 games to 1, you almost sensed, like, going back to Carolina, you knew that game 5 was gonna be really hard for them to win, and once that series was even 2-2, I felt like there was no way Vegas was gonna win the series, and going back to what you're talking about with Brandon Bussey, I mean, let's remember that this was a team that last year stumbled on to Pyotr Kochetkov, where it looked like they were set with he and Freddie Anderson in net, and now all of a sudden it ends up being neither one of those guys on the ice when they win the Stanley Cup. It just shows you how quickly things can change.
Yeah. By the way, our next live show is June 23rd at Splitrocks at 7 p.m. Can't wait for that. We haven't had a live show in a minute. And also, by the way, thanks to our newest sponsor, Tony Hoagland State Farm, my personal State Farm agent. He's in Champlin. So welcome back to the show to Tony. Back to the Stanley Cup final, Anthony. Let's talk a little bit about Carolina and the job that Eric Tulsky did here. So obviously, we know that Rod Brindamore is their coach. 8 years there. He has been behind the bench or on the ice for every single playoff win in franchise history except for 2, which is pretty crazy. When you think about it, he is the face of that franchise. You can't say that about any other coach in the league. But, who knows if he even returns? Like, he could go out on top even with 3 years left on his contract. There's a lot of rumblings about that. Even his quotes after the game was almost non-committal. But the one thing that Tulsky did, and I covered them the 3 years that they lost in the conference final in the last 6 years, is he really identified, like, the one thing about them is they are really, really, they have an immense belief of the way that they're building this team. And they never changed their style. They just continued to add to it. So they felt like they needed a game breaker. They went hard after Nikolai Ehlers, and Ehlers was outstanding. They traded for Mikko Rantanen. He didn't want to re-sign there, so they rectify it by gutting not only Logan Stankoven, but Taylor Hall in essentially a 3-way trade. They needed goaltending help. They go get Bussey off the waiver wire, and then he has an unbelievable year. They felt like the one thing I've said on the show before is that if the Carolina Hurricanes are pursuing one of your defensemen, before you trade him, you better figure out why they are pursuing one of your defensemen, because they seem to know that analytics department. And Keandre Miller turned out to be the perfect fit for that franchise. And so he added to the team. He didn't break it up, where a lot of GMs would have said, you know what, enough is enough. We haven't reached that top, that pinnacle. They've gone to the conference final, weren't able to get over the hump, and then they break it up. He did not do that. He added to it. And the one thing about that organization, Anthony, is it's all about skating, but it doesn't matter the size of the players. And you look at that second line in particular, the Logan Stankover line. Logan Stankover is 5'8" generously. Jackson Plake is undersized. Taylor Hall has size, but he's not huge. And that line wound up being the best line for them in the regular season and then again in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, and that kinda goes back to what I was saying earlier, that I think I was happy for those guys that they won because of the fact that they took a lot of criticism. There were a lot of people saying you couldn't win with the way they were playing, and yet they never wavered from it, never doubted it. And I think the other thing is that you have to give them some credit for being willing to take a shot and admit that it didn't work. So they took their shot at just to use the last couple seasons, and I know there were others before this, but they felt like they were lacking because they were such a great puck possession team, felt like they needed a score. They went out and took a shot at Jake Gensel. It was obvious that Gensel wasn't going to re-sign there, so they made the trade that essentially gave their negotiating rights to Tampa and at least got something for him. The bigger one was Rantanen, where they took their shot at Rantanen, and it was obvious that Rantanen wasn't interested in being a part of what they were doing long term. But I also think they might have recognized that, you know what, as great a scorer as Mikko
Mhm.
Rantanen is, he doesn't fit the way we play. And they were willing to move on from it rather than just ride it out and say, we took our shot at this guy.
Yep.
We're going to see how it works. Instead, they said, this isn't going to be the long-term solution. So let's get something else. And I'm sure you dug into this deeper than I did, but I heard some of the stories after the fact about what was potentially a trade combination for Rantanen, and there were some that said that at times Jason Robertson might have been mentioned in some of those
Mhm.
trades, and instead they wanted Logan Stankoven because they thought he fit their style better. And I don't know that that's a factual statement or not, but even if it's not, they got the guy that fit their system. Nobody would have said that a key point in the trade coming back for Mikko Rantanen would be even up to get Logan Stankoven, and yet Stankoven was great for them. Plus, they added some depth with picks in that, and you mentioned Taylor Hall coming as a part of it as well, where it's I always have respect for guys who believe in what they're doing, believe in their system, and are willing to stick to it even when, number one, there are critics out there who say it isn't going to work, but also once you take your shot, to be able to say it didn't work. So now let's quickly pivot and move on and not just take it as a loss. Instead, let's make another move and turn this into something that can be good for us.
I have a lot of respect for Eric Tulsky. And look, there were a lot of people that, especially the dinosaurs covering the game and in the game, that sort of made fun of Carolina when they gave him the job, and promoted him from within after Don Waddell left for Columbus. And look what he has done. He believes in what he does. He's incredibly intelligent. He has a very intelligent front office around him. In fact, his assistant GM, one of his assistant GMs, Tyler Dello, first athletic writer in history to lift the cup. He is their assistant GM. He was our analytics guy for a while at the Athletic when we
Hey,
first
there's a
started.
chance someday,
Yeah,
Michael
one
Russo,
day.
someday.
Yep, one day I will be able to lift. You think I could lift that 35-pound cup?
I
I don't
don't
think
think
I
you
could.
could
I
lift
think I
it.
would go ass over tea kettle. So
Well, it's lighter than a curling stone.
yeah, and you saw how good I was at that. The other thing about them is just again the coincidence that they went after Mitch Marner last year. He wouldn't waive his no move to go down there, stayed in Toronto, wound up picking his shot, going to Vegas. Obviously had a tremendous postseason, and Dilly didn't. He gets the natural hat trick there in games, what was it, 3? And then games 4, 5, and 6, completely invisible. Eichel looked absolutely cooked in this series, didn't have a goal, was shanking shots left and right. He just looked tired. Maybe he's hurt. That's always the danger in picking players apart in the postseason because you don't know what they're dealing with underlying from that standpoint. But just, what I loved about Carolina is they are a team in the truest sense of the word. Even when we were picking our Conn Smythe winner, the fact that there was no obvious choice from them. It could have been Taylor Hall. It could have been Logan Stankoven. It could have been Jackson Blake. It could have been Jacob Slavin. It could have been Jordan Stahl, who did win it. At the beginning of the series, it could have been Freddie Anderson. It really just shows how this team is just an absolute quote unquote team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I thought the choice was obvious to be Jordan Stahl. And I mentioned that early. And if you remember, I think it was after game 3, and we were just talking about if Carolina won it, who could win it. And I said, I think it's, to me, the obvious choice was Jordan Stahl. The only question was, will he have enough points? Will he score enough to win the award? But I said, I bet if you walked inside that room, everybody in there would tell you he was the guy. When you look at what he did on faceoffs, you look at what he did defensively against the best players on every team they faced.
Yep.
All started with the fight with Brady Tkachuk 5 seconds into game 1 that it was almost like a set the tone, like, hey, this year, this time is different for us. And just to go back to the style of Carolina, that it is, I don't know that we've talked about this a few times during Wild broadcasts when we've faced the Hurricanes, and we've tried to show it statistically, but I think their shot attempt differential this year was plus 1,800 something. It was like 700 more than any team in the league. And if you look over the last 10 years, I think it's 6 of the highest 7 shot attempt differentials in a single season are the Hurricanes. I mean, this team they have taken puck possession to a different level. And there are guys that fit that style, and there are guys that don't. And they have really done a terrific job building it. I just the difference between them and the second best team every year is, in many years it was a 2-to-1. Like, they were plus 1,800. The next best team was less than plus 900. It is not close. And I think you're right when you say, you look at their team, there was always this theory that you had to have the big, strong defenseman to win in the playoffs. And there are some teams who have had it. Florida had it. Vegas had it. But Tampa had it. But there are also teams that win, that have proven you can win this way. And they did it. Colorado did it. I mean, it is possible to win with teams that skate and possess the puck. And I think it's Carolina proved that. Hi, this is Anthony LaPanta. I recently made my first visit ever to a stretch lab. I stopped at the location out in Maple Grove and had a great stretch practitioner named Tom, who was terrific. I can't wait to get back. As you try to fight the aging process, which I'm right there with you, trying to battle it, flexibility is one of the big keys. I felt great after my first stretch, and I'm planning to go back weekly. There are 10 locations all across the Twin Cities. I highly recommend checking out Stretch Lab.
Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services, your independent authorized Connecticut dealer. It's summer, and that means home improvement season. At Aquarius, they know managing a household and all the expenses that comes with it is no easy task. They also know how important having worry-free water is in your home every day. Your family deserves water you can trust. You use it every day for drinking, cooking, cleaning, and bathing. That's why I'm excited to share that their summer trade-in and trade-up program has started. Trade in your old water softener and trade up to a Connecticut whole home water treatment system. The best part, get an additional $500 off on top of their summer sale prices. Say goodbye to hard water, rust stains, and unwanted contaminants, and hello to cleaner, worry-free water flowing through every faucet, every day, all day. It all starts with a free water test scheduled today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to tell them Russo sent you. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We could switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us even switch our favorite sports teams. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you could switch and save with Tony Hoagland State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Tony Hoagland and his team can switch you over so you can start saving today. If you thought your last homeowner's insurance renewal was really high, or it's been a while since you reviewed your coverages, Tony and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Tony and his team, it's easy to switch and save. You can reach out to Tony's office at 763-421-4900 to start saving today. Again, that's 763-421-4900. One of the biggest moves they did was letting Dmitry Orlov go because he was so bad last year, especially in the conference final. And then they go and replace him with Keandre Miller. But to your point, Sean Walker's undersized, from a back ender, and he was tremendous. Jacob Slavin's just an absolute beast. Like, you could have made a case, that he also was a potential Conn Smythe winner. In fact, the only one that I think even gave him a vote in our Conn Smythe voting was Pierre LeBrun. But I remember, I submitted my votes right before he broke up that 2-on-1 with Mark Stone, and it was perfect to watch how good he was in here. Anthony, before we turn our attention to the Minnesota Wild, and there is a lot to talk about with the Wild. Obviously, you had your anniversary this past week. How was that?
Oh, it was terrific. And actually, along the way,
by the way, before we get to that, I just want to let everybody know I am not 60 because there are a lot of people that actually believed you, which pissed me off. Sorry,
I didn't say that you were. I said it might be.
Yeah. Well, people didn't see the might be.
My people were telling me. My sources said, no, happy birthday, though. What are you really, like 53 or something like that? 54? 52? Nice. Yeah. Well, good for you. Happy birthday. Yes. And you got to celebrate by making a stop on your way to Vegas, swinging through Atlanta.
Yeah,
is that right?
I actually went down to Atlanta, saw my mom, which was great because I hadn't seen them since the fall, and saw my brother and nephews. We had a great couple meals there. So it was cool because, I just flew in from Raleigh Landed at like 11 a.m. I was on a plane at 7 a.m. the next morning. But it was great seeing my nephews. They're actually my youngest nephew is his birthday today, so I got him a couple Nintendo Switch games, an MLB game and an NBA game, which he was super excited about. Then my oldest nephew is turning into a little like man now. It's crazy. Last time I saw him, he was still a kid, and he's not that way anymore.
Wow. No, we had a well, happy birthday to the young Russos, but
Yeah.
we had an unbelievable day for our anniversary and had a great brunch at a spot we love at Churchill Street in our neighborhood. We went to a craft show, like all locally made stuff, and it was and picked I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a teacher at Bethel who does some woodworking, and we picked up like a couple bowls there, but met some fans of the show actually over the course of the day. One was a gal who works at a place called Summer Lakes Cocktail Mix. It's local and it's all freshly squeezed stuff. You have to buy it frozen, so there's no preservatives and stuff in it, but was a big fan of the show. Can say, hey, will you come and try this stuff? And so we tried it out, bought a couple bottles of that. And over the course of the day, we wound up going, have you ever been to Public Domain in downtown Minneapolis?
I don't think so.
It's kind of has like a speakeasy feel to it
Mhm.
and a cocktail bar that they don't have any menus, but the bartenders have like the way they put it is they've memorized every cocktail on the planet. So you just kind of tell them, hey, I'm looking for something citrusy and boozy and then yep, this is what I think you're looking for. And we met a big fan of the show, Tom Bagnoli, fine Italian guy, just coincidentally walking out of the parking garage when we parked downtown. And it was funny because he turns, he says, no way, is it really you? And then Margot walked out behind me and he turns and he goes, and Margot, I've never met you, but I listen to the show all the time. So I feel like I know all about you. And it turned out he happened to be like a behind the bar guy at Public Domain. So we were already going there, but we walked in and had just an unbelievable experience there, had some great cocktails. And we had a guy named Julian was our bartender that night. And whatever you say you like, then they just make something for you that, yep, here, this I think sounds exactly like what you're drinking. And so we had a great night chatting with those guys and then went down to Boucheron for dinner, where the manager there, Tyler, is also a big fan of the show. And our old friends at Feller's Ranch are on their menu. So as soon as I saw Feller's Ranch steaks on the menu, we were like, well, that's what we're having as a main course. But had a great chat with Tyler at Boucheron and a great dinner there. So it was just it was a great night, but it was kind of cool how along the way we met people that are big fans of our show. So I don't know if any of you guys are listening to this show, but we appreciated all the chats and comments and compliments that you guys had for us. And we celebrated 34 years. So it's been quite a spring with our son AJ getting married and now 34, toasting to 34 years. We're pretty lucky right now, pretty blessed. Family's in a great spot and had a terrific anniversary celebration on Saturday.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you guys are blessed. We'll be in Europe anytime soon. As long as we're doing shout outs, coming off the plane yesterday, I met a guy named Andy Tish. And what I loved about him is he actually said he loves reading my stuff. Most people, when I run into them, they're like, oh, I love listening on Worst Seats, love listening on The Fan. It's very rare that somebody actually says, I love reading your stuff.
Well, ask him if he can send me his login info so I can
yeah, I
read some
know.
of it.
So I appreciate Andy Tish, who is a former player as well. So
I think I recognize that name. Where did he play?
Like I often do, like he introduced himself, and so of course, as we parted ways getting off the jet bridge, all of a sudden I'm just googling Andy Tish, and I got to his elite prospects page as well.
Where did he play?
He played. Hang on, he played at St. Thomas, I believe. Poor Andy Tish is suddenly going to be the star of the show.
Well, the
Hopefully
name
his
sounds
significant
familiar,
others
so
knew hopefully his significant others knew that he was in Vegas and we're not just outing him here.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
of course, I can't find his, I hope I'm getting his name right now. I can't find his page. So now
Well,
there
it's
we go.
funny because the way I was playing golf out at White Eagle last week, and all of a sudden this guy came walking up to our table, and he says, hey, he said, no way, I can't believe you're sitting here. And so you won't remember me, but I played at Hill Murray back in the early 1990s, and these were the early days of my broadcasting career covering high school hockey on KABL television, my analyst was a guy named Tarmo Kubitz, the only guy named Tarmo on the planet, I bet. But he,
That's
and
funny.
he came up and he said, and I said, "Oh, I remember. He is. It was Matt Maurer. He was the captain of the team." And it's like, "You were 14. I remember well. I remember some of your line mates. I remember the overtime game you won against St. Paul Johnson in the section semifinals, and those little things that stick in your mind. But names just sound familiar, and that's why this guy's name sounds familiar to me, like as if I maybe covered some of him at one point, but I don't remember for sure. It is funny though, the number of guys who will come and tell me that, and I don't think they realize how special those years were for me, how much I remember about those high school teams. And at that time, that was all I was doing. So I was really truly invested in all of the high school hockey community and high school other sports too. But it was, we were all about it, did a weekly show on it, and I don't want to say lived and died with these guys because I wasn't invested in any one team, but boy, I bet I knew their stories as well as they knew them back in those days.
Yeah. And by the way, it's Andy Dish. What an
Dish,
idiot,
yes,
man. Yeah. What an
Disch. In
yeah.
fact, I think he's a Totino Grace guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I cannot believe I just screwed up his name. I am so sorry, Andy. So
all right,
hopefully
well,
Andy's
yeah, he's
significant other knows that he was in Vegas, because otherwise we've just like ruined his life.
and you
Uh,
just a fine TG Eagle, and you missed the opportunity to. I
I
knew
know.
when you said the name, it sounded familiar, and I kept thinking, I wonder if I'm thinking of Andy Dish. Yeah, he
Yeah.
played for Totino Grace, and
Yeah,
go
played a lot of
Eagles.
minor league
Eagles
hockey
are
after
everywhere.
University of St. Thomas. So there we go. So Andy, hopefully this was okay. Otherwise, get in touch with me immediately and I'll get Alex to cut it out. So
No, 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 Alex. There's no cutting in this show. What Russo says stands forever.
okay. All right, let's get to the Minnesota Wild, Anthony.
Just call me Dish.
Yeah, the big news of the week is Greg Cronin has left after 1 year with the Iowa Wild. He's going to become an assistant coach, run their D and PK for the St. Louis Blues. So congratulations for Greg to getting back into the league. Said all the right things afterwards when I texted with him that day, and how much he enjoyed his 1 year in Des Moines, living down there, working with Matt Hendricks and the Minnesota Wild. Felt like they really built a culture there in the second half of the season. In my last 30 games, they're actually 600. Got off to a tough start when they were without bodies and things like that, in large part because of the injuries up here in Minnesota. And obviously, look, they've got to get better down there. I talked to Matt Hendricks yesterday. Matt has started his full search for the Iowa Wild. He said he's already gotten ton of calls, ton of emails, and is going to take his time with it, and then he'll start working with the AGMs and development guys, Brad Bombardier and Cody McLeod and those folks, to pick the new coach of the Iowa Wild. And it's an important decision, right? I mean, this is who's going to be guiding a lot of their guys that are going to be turning pro this year if they're down there. The Charlie Stramels, the Rieger Lorenzes, Dexheimer, Viking Gustafson Nyberg. There's one other, Chase Wutzke, their goalie, is starting down there. It will be interesting to see what happens here, because they got some restricted free agents they've got to re-sign or walk away from, like a Samuel Hulabai who's not coming back. They're going to have to sign some guys to two-way contracts, but they've got to get better scoring down there. And the other thing is that, look, Mercer, William Russo, who's an AHL contracted guy, and Chase Wutzke are going to be their goalies to start their season, because Philip Gustafson is not going to be ready. So whoever that third goalie is that they sign for Iowa is actually going to probably start as Jesper Wallsted's backup. So they're going to go with young goalies to start the year. So it's going to be just interesting who they sign here. If they go veteran, like bring back a John Torchetti, a Mike Yeo, who is under contract in Ottawa but would probably like to be a head coach again, or do they go kind of new here? It's not the one thing that Matt said is it doesn't have to necessarily be the most experienced guy in the world. Last year, he wanted that in Greg Cronin. This year, he does want experience, but it doesn't have to be somebody that's been a head coach forever.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which way they go and how they build there. I know it's been It's been something that they've been struggling to develop is the right culture there, and it felt like the second half of the season, they were starting to gain some traction. So I think this is an important decision, and I think it goes without saying, but also how they stack that roster, really important. We've seen over the last couple of years how important depth from the American Hockey League can be in the NHL, and Minnesota's probably been right near the top with how many games they've had to get from guys that they intended to spend the year in the American League and wound up having to use those guys in the NHL. So it's a very important piece of a franchise and piece of an NHL team.
Absolutely. So we'll see where they go with that. Again, no timetable, and Matt Hendricks has begun that start. But obviously, the one thing that Matt made clear on the phone call yesterday is that look, it's time for this team to make the playoffs. Obviously, development is paramount down there. But you don't want your guys being black aces here, and you can do both. The Carolina Hurricanes are a perfect example of this. They are currently in the Calder Cup final with the Chicago Wolves, and they just won the Stanley Cup. So you can have a good upper team and a good lower team. It doesn't need to be one or the other. And the Wild at some point they've got to start winning down there, and it just has not been good enough. Their players haven't developed enough, especially their blue liners. I mean, the fact that we have not seen Carson Lambos here, David Spacek here, Jack Parrott here, the fact that Ryan O'Rourke flamed out, this has got to change, and we've got to start to see that.
Yeah, and I think player development is always a challenge just because of the fact that there's a balance between getting guys the reps they need and the positions that they need with the long-term future of the National Hockey League team in mind. But at the same time, I believe you have to find ways to win, that guys winning together. I think Tampa was one of the teams that showed this. Like their core won in the American League first before they started this run in the NHL of, I don't know what, for the last 10 years, where they've been a team that perennially is looked at as one of the teams to beat in the East. And they're not the first, but it was kind of their core came up together. And I've always believed that guys who win together in the minor leagues, that can carry over into the highest level. And you establish that culture, but also just that chemistry and camaraderie of guys finding ways to win together. And, I think that's important, and it's been lacking in this organization for sure.
Without a doubt. All right, let's turn our attention to the Wild. It's going to be really interesting to see what goes on here in the next week or so. The draft is the 27th and 28th. Obviously, we know the Wild are in the midst of trying to hire probably afterwards a new director of amateur scouting, with Judd Brackett going to be the AGM at Toronto. Ricard Pearson and Matt Sells will run their draft table this week or next week, I should say. And then they'll go out and try to hire somebody, and they've gotten a ton of people that have shown interest right away. They don't have a first or second round pick. The other thing is that here we are on June 17th, 14 days till July 1st, and the Wild have not re-signed Matt Zuccarello, not re-signed Vladimir Tarasenko, not re-signed Nick Foligno, and not re-signed Zach Bogosian. I do think they have taken hit a break here. I think they have so many balls in the air in terms of trades, in terms of potential free agents, that right now it is not a guarantee they bring back any of those guys. I think Tarasenko is going to market, and the fact that Zuccarello isn't signed here is really interesting, because I thought that after the season when he said he wanted to come back, it would just be one phone call and you'd be back. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet because they have a lot of balls in the air, and also because he wants representative money, and maybe he doesn't want to take a pay cut from the $4.25 million, which he would have to do if he's going to come back here. So there is a chance that he's going on. What makes this interesting, Anthony, and we talked about this last week, is Marcus Johansson has left. Tarasenko is probably not being brought back. And Zuccarello, if he goes to market, now suddenly the Wild are without two top six wingers, potentially three if you consider Vladimir Tarasenko a middle six guy. And so that's a lot of offense off their lineup, especially from a playmaking standpoint with Zuccarello, a playmaking standpoint with Johansson, and then the goal scoring with Tarasenko. So suddenly they're going to have to add wingers to their potential shopping list this offseason. And we'll talk about some of the names out there right now. But what's your first of all thoughts? Are you surprised?
Well, a little bit, and I mean, wherever you slot those guys, it's 3 out of your top 9,
Yep.
however you wanna call them, and I know we talked a lot about in an ideal world that Marcus Johansson's a third-line guy, but bottom line is it's 3 guys out of your top 9 from last year that you now have to replace. Zuccarello thing is interesting to me because I agree with you. I kinda have the same feel, like it would be a pretty quick negotiation, and it might be. We don't know what's going
Yeah, it
on
could
behind the
still happen.
scenes. It might just be a, "Hey, this is what we're thinking, but we gotta finalize the trade first before we know exactly
Mm.
what we have to give you." It doesn't seem like Zuccarello's the type that's gonna say, "I'm gonna go out and leverage a deal with somebody else to then come back and say, 'Hey, I can get 4,000,000 here, so you're gonna have to match that.'" I don't get that feeling from him, and now I haven't talked to him since the season ended, but I agree with you where it always felt like if he was gonna come back, it was likely gonna be here and that he wanted to be here, and that I always hesitate to say that guys are taking a discount or taking it isn't really a discount. You're still making a ton of money, and it's just a matter of what the team has to afford to pay underneath the cap. So it wouldn't shock me if that's what's happening with him. Tarasenko doesn't surprise me at all. I really felt like there was no way that he was gonna take less to come back here, especially I mean, I think he liked it here, and he ended up being a little bit more of a leader guy than I expected him to be when he was here, and I think many in the organization would agree with that, but at the same time, I don't think it was likely that he saw a spot for himself in the top 6 here, and I think he still believes he can play in that role and play on a scoring line somewhere else, and somebody will pay him roughly what he was making here somewhere else and probably give him at least a shot to be in the top 6.
Yeah, he had 23 goals and you know, I think I told you on one of the previous podcasts that I was talking to Ivan Barbashev before the series about his relationship with Pavel Dorofeev, and he brought up the fact that, you know, this is what Tarasenko taught him in St. Louis, and we saw that, you know, the way that Tarasenko treated Danil Yurov here, so good person as well. So, you know, look, you know, Vladdy, you know, it was fun covering him, but it certainly feels like he's going to market. I think the one up in the air is Zuccarello. Then we'll see what happens with Nick Foligno and Bogosian. You know, these are things that can happen even after the fact on July 1. But you know, maybe you try to impress. I did see a report on Twitter that the Wild were close to signing Jeff Petrie. That is not true, at least currently, as far as I know. So we'll see what happens. The issue here is the Wild don't have a ton of cap space. So if they suddenly have to go to free agency and sign guys, it's going to be really interesting. Now, some of the names out there, Mason Marchment, he is a Bill Guerin type of player, but he's going to want some money. You know, Bobby McMahon, Jaden Schwartz, intriguing. Um, David Perron, if you're going to go that route, you know, he's somebody that could still score. We know that because he's killed the Wild for many, many years. Alex Tuck, probably way, way, way too expensive if he's getting over 10. So two guys that are intriguing to me if they don't re-sign with their current teams, and one looks like he's definitely going the market, is Anders Lee. But he is not a, you know, he's never been a great skater, but he's certainly obviously in the twilight years of his career. And then the other one is Patrick Kane, who is still a power play merchant, could almost take that role that Matt Zuccarello has on the number one unit. You could put him on a line with you know, Kirill Kaprizov. The really fascinating part of this right now is that Pat Brisson, who's an agent, obviously a power agent in the NHL, he's got Dylan Larkin. Okay. He just got Vincent Trocheck. Reports are that Vincent Trocheck has changed to him, who has a lot of term left on his deal. But the fact that he changed to him almost tells you that, you know, there's a chance here that he wants an agent that could help broker the type of trade. He's got Patrick Kane. So suddenly Pat Brisson's paws are in a lot of things right now. And obviously he's in touch with the Wild because of what's going on with Dylan Larkin and the fact that Dylan Larkin has put the Wild on his list as being a team to trade here. So it's just going to be fascinating. You almost feel like at some point here, the Wild are going to have a Pat Brisson client on this roster. The other one that I didn't mention is he's Quinn Hughes' agent. So Quinn is also obviously negotiating an extension with the Wild right now. So it's just technically he also has a piece of Tarasenko as well, even though Paul Theophanis is doing the lead to that. But they have a relationship now, that agency. So it's just, Pat Brisson is going to be a player here in anything that happens with the Wild, most likely this offseason.
Yeah, and I think the Wild might be in a spot now where whether it's the trade world or free in order to free up the cash to pursue one of the free agents instead, that it almost feels like it has to be a multiple deal situation, doesn't it? Where it's
Yep.
this trade is made to clear the space to make this move, whether it be a trade or a free agent signing. It seems more and more unlikely that it's just going to be able to be here's the assets that we have to make a trade, whether it be for Dylan Larkin or any of the other guys you just mentioned, that it might be more likely that, all right, we're going to pursue Larkin, but in order to get the assets we need, we've got to make this trade first. Or we're going to pursue one of the free agents, but in order to do that, we have to clear the cap space by making this trade somewhere else first. It just seems like right now, that's probably why there's such a delay in some of these other decisions, is because it isn't just as easy as let's make this swap, these guys for this guy or these assets for this guy, that it's going to be more, all right, we've got to make, if that's going to work, it's going to require these other two moves to make the roster fit to make that move work.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download Onyx Fish on the App Store or visit onyxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch.
A great haircut is always a mood booster, but it's even better when it's convenient too. That's why you'll love online check-in at Great Clips. You just check in from your phone and get a ready next text when you're up next. Plus, with the convenient hours at Great Clips salons, you can get a haircut even when you're really busy. So if your hair and your mood could use a boost, download the app today, Great Clips. It's gonna be great.
My friends have been all in on Lucy lately, and the good news is it's never been easier to try because Lucy is now available at Quick Trip. They've tried just about every pouch out there, and Lucy has become the one they keep coming back to. Great flavor, great strength options, and a pouch that actually holds up. You can get Lucy in mint, apple ice, mango, espresso, berry citrus, and apple cider. The flavor lasts, and if you want to try the entire lineup, start with the 6-pack. The game changer is Lucy Breakers. Every pouch has a burstable flavor capsule. Bite into it for an extra hit of flavor and a smooth kick that keeps going. My friends call Lucy top tier, and they recommend it to everyone. Give them a try. Get 20% off your first order when you buy online at lucy.co/worstseats with promo code worstseats. That's lucy.co/worstseats with promo code worstseats. And if you don't want to wait, check out their store locator to find where you can pick up Lucy at your nearest Quick Trip today. Here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Yeah, the Wild, look, they first of all only have about 10 million of cap space. Now that includes players that are going to have to be on the team, but they obviously got Michael McCarron at a really quality price at 3.3 million, in my opinion. Obviously, some people don't agree, but those people also don't have a feel of what's going on with the Minnesota Wild, nor Michael McCarron and how he fit in here. But they have like 10 million, but that
those people don't
like,
have Michael Russo's sources.
Yeah, exactly. They have like, obviously that includes like a Hunter Haight, but includes a couple two-way guys that aren't technically on the roster, but are going to have to be on the roster. So we'll see what happens there. The Wild also, again, have Gustafson at 6.8 million. There's a chance they have to throw him on LTIR to begin the season. The other thing I like about, Kane and Andrews is he could give them type of, the types of contracts that are 35-year-old contracts, so you throw bonuses in there as well, and don't have to, you keep the actual salary down, the actual paid salary down during the season. You still have to account for that, but allows you to go over the cap if need be, if you sign one of the 35-year-old type of contracts. So we'll see where this goes. But clearly, to also what your point is of getting a third team involved is if you're going to trade for Dylan Larkin, to make sure that that Detroit is getting a representative trade back, you might have to get a third team involved to try to make a three-way trade, and then it allows Detroit to maybe get that NHL type player that the Wild are not willing to give up, because it certainly doesn't feel like they're going to give up Wallstedt in the deal. I don't think they want to give up Eriksson Ek or Brodin in the deal, and if that's the case, unless Detroit wants all futures, you're going to probably have to get a third team involved. So we'll see where this goes. I mean, maybe Trocheck winds up being their plan B, especially now that Pat Brisson could be involved in potentially brokering a trade. Let's go to questions on X, Anthony, then we'll wrap up the show. Again, June 23rd at 7 p.m. at Splitrocks is our next live show. Looking forward to seeing you there. And that'll be our last show of the month. And then right after free agency, right before we go to Europe, we'll do our first show in Europe. First show before Europe, and then we'll obviously do what's become a traditional show in Europe, Anthony, with a studio audience. So that'll be fun as well. We'll do that.
It'll probably be at the tail end of the trip, so it'll be
it'll
be in French instead of in Italian.
Yep. We'll also have our, if we need to have an emergency pod while there, Anthony and I can get together if all of a sudden, the Wild make a huge trade.
Well, the emergency pods often I don't even get an invite. So
yeah, I know.
It might just be you in some hotel lobby talking to yourself for a while.
I'll let you in the emergency pods if you would somehow get a little blood pressure and get nervous about something. So, but you never do, so we can't include you in those.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to be nervous about right now.
Yeah. All right. Anthony Winker says, knock on wood, Anthony. Anthony Winker asks, could you see the Wild pivoting away from the Larkins of the world and looking younger? I'm thinking McTavish, or helping Seattle with their log jam at center with a Matty Beniers type, or even throwing a major at Carlson or a offer sheet at Carlson or Fantelli. Well, the Wild don't have their first round pick or second round pick this year, so they can't do something like that. I don't think they want to go younger. I mean, McTavish might make sense, Anthony, but look, if they wanted to go younger, they could have gone after a Kent Johnson. They could have gone after a Shane Wright. Their goal is to win now, and it's not Billy Guerin's MO right now to go after a young build team. If they're signing Quinn Hughes, they have Kirill Kaprizov signed to $17 million. The window is now, and the early part. I mean, Kirill's about to turn 30. I just don't think that those make the most sense. Mason McTavish might be intriguing, but what do you think?
Yeah, to me, some of those other guys you mentioned are more project guys, and I don't know about Kent Johnson. There have been times where I've watched him and I've thought he looks like a guy who could be a really good player in this league. But more the Wright, Beniers, those are guys more that are. I think you have a little bit better idea. I mean, that would be a kind of a buy low risk, hope that something clicks for him kind of situation. McTavish, I think my guess would cost probably as much or more anyway, just because of his youth. And I think he's got a chance to be a really good player, but the Ducks they're not going to just give the guy away.
Yeah. Mitch asks, any chance the Wild take a swing at Patrick Kane? We just talked about that. It does have that Marc-Andre Fleury feel to it. You get a guy at the end of his career that's a sure thing. You're a Hall of Famer. But he could still score. He's a power play stud. So that to me would be we all know that Billy has a lot of time for him as well.
Yeah, and he'd be intriguing if Matt Zuccarello doesn't come back, because even if he's a guy that you use, maybe he's a guy who's just a power play specialist almost, for lack of a better term. Not that obviously he's going to have a spot in your lineup too, but he can still score, and kind of the same, different type of player for sure, but similar point in the career to the other guy you mentioned, Anders Lee, who's a local guy who, might have some interest in coming back to play in his home state. And I don't remember if he got to 20 or not last year. He had to be close, but I want to say, other than an injury shortened or the COVID shortened year of 21, I think he had 20 goals in 9 years in a row. So he's still scoring, even if
Yeah.
even if it doesn't look as impactful as it
Mm-hmm.
did earlier in his career. But he's always been a tough guy to play against, a big physical presence in front of the net. And, just a winner too, just a terrific, I think he'd fit in well inside the room here.
Yeah. And the Islanders have made it clear. The only thing with him is how much does he want? Because the Islanders it seems like he is going to market and it could be potentially money related. K Reed asks, will the Wild have the highest paid fourth line in the league with Trenyon, Moose, and McCarron? Have to think of moving Trenyon would make sense. What do you think of that? I would agree to clear up some cap space. I didn't love his playoffs. Now, he was absolutely crushed by Colin Blackwell earlier in the playoffs and clearly wasn't healthy after that. But he certainly didn't have the impact that he had in the previous series against Vegas last year. Anthony, Trenyon moving him would make sense. I mean, the one thing that, again, Carolina showed to me, it's not size that matters, it's speed. And that would be my one concern is if just what it does for the speed. Remember, McCarron also could wound up being their third line center.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Is all three of those guys are capable of playing on the third line too. So I think it's more how you build your bottom six, and so you have the size part with those three guys. The other three guys in your bottom six, if you think of it as six players, could be more speed-based guys. It could be guys like Yurov. It could be where you, in some combination, Foligno last year, in the rest of his career here, has played in a role above a fourth liner. So I think to just label him a fourth liner. McCarron, I think, showed down the stretch this year that he's capable of being a third line center. The Wild had him in the top six, even at the end of the playoffs against Colorado, which I think that's probably above his pay grade, above his talent level, so to speak, but showed he could fit in there for a short time if need be. So I think to label those guys the fourth line is a little bit of a stretch, but I do think speed is important. But the Wild have also had seasons where they felt like they weren't big enough, that they weren't strong enough, and that size was a big factor in the Dallas series. So it kind of depends on your matchup, depends on the way that the game is played. There are times where size has really mattered and where size has been important. So I think having those three guys in your bottom six is okay because of the fact that you have some flexibility with the rest of your roster to perhaps build it with a little more speed.
Yep. All right. A couple others, and then we'll wrap up the show. Trade Brodin and get Radish, younger, longer future. Radish wants $9 million a year. I just don't see the Wild being able to do that. What's your thought on that, Anthony?
Well, it would be nice if they got Cale Makar too. There are some guys that are just they're not likely to fit. And, unless it was you'd have to replace one of the guys that are right now cemented in your top four to make room for a guy like that. I like him as a player, don't get me wrong, but you can't add him to a top four that's already going to be making the kind of money that the Wild's top four are going to be making.
Yeah. Will, your buddy's nephew or cousin, what is our biggest asset to trade for Larkin? I mean, clearly it's going to be Stramel, Yurov, and a first. So that would probably be the package. Because again, if you trade Eriksson Ek in the deal, now you're a bottom six, you're a top six center off again. So you're just offsetting the move. I just don't see a lot of guys on the team making sense to trade in that. Obviously Ryan Hartman, a Yakov Trent, like players like that.
Somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't, we'll see. It sure sounds like they have thoughts of getting more than that for Dylan Larkin, which... And if they require more than that, then that's what we were talking about earlier, where there almost feels like there has to be another deal involved, a third team in this trade, or another deal elsewhere to acquire some other assets that could then sweeten that pot.
Yeah. Patrick Knight, total hypothetical question. Since the new league year hasn't started yet and seeing how things have played out, could 97 instruct his agent to go to Billy and say, we will take 8 years at $14 million to give the team more money to use? Has that ever happened before in history anywhere? No, that cannot happen. If Kirill wanted to do that, he needed to do that in September, not now. He has made his bed. The Wild have made his bed, and he wasn't willing to compromise. And now it's probably going to cost them Zuccarello. I mean, which is the irony here is you can't redo contracts in the NHL. If he wanted to compromise and help the Wild have cap space in the future to re-sign Quinn Hughes, to re-sign Matt Zuccarello, he needed to do that before he took the most money in franchise history. The way that Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, Adrian Kempe, all of them were willing to play ball and do that. So, no, that can't be happening. I don't mean to be harsh, but this is why I was saying at the very beginning that he made sure to take every single penny that the Wild offered him, and more. I mean, he turned down $16 million to get $17 million. So he's not suddenly, even if he was willing to, he cannot now take $3 million less. He had to do it before that, and now it is what it is. Justin
Suppose he could
Spratt,
just set up an automatic Venmo to Zuccarello for I'll just Venmo you a couple $100,000 each month.
yeah, exactly. That's what Zuki should do. Justin Spratt, with Carolina probably buying out Jesperi Kotkaniemi, do you see the Wild taking a chance on him as a backup if they don't land a top 6 center or wing? I don't think so. I like actually him a lot as a guy. The fact that he wasn't able to fit in there in Carolina at the end and was a healthy scratch throughout the playoffs and not even a thought to get in. I just don't see it. I've taught Kotkaniemi has been available before via trade, and as far as I know, the Wild showed no interest. So, I agree that it might be worth a flyer. I just don't see him being somebody that the Wild have interest in, but maybe that could change. I mean, obviously, all of a sudden, if you get to this point, things, when you're a little more desperate for players, maybe that suddenly does change, but I don't see it.
Yeah, it might be a guy worth a flyer, but that's
Yeah.
about it. I mean, he was a 3rd overall pick, so it's
Yeah.
there is always that question, that wonder, like, does a change of scenery all of a sudden ignite something in a guy with that kind of skill?
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't seen it yet, and I don't think it would be
Yeah.
something that would be worth much in a trade.
Steve Hoagland asked, with John Hines needing extension, could the Wild talk to Cassidy just to do their due diligence before signing Hines to an extension? Not if they don't get permission from Vegas, and right now Vegas isn't inclined to give permission to anybody in their division. So I would think it would be the same thing in their conference. And the Wild are signing John Hines to an extension. That is happening at some point. So they have no interest in Cassidy. Tom Brown, what would surprise you more with Quinn's extension? No extension before the season or an 8-year extension signed July 1? I would say no extension before the season. I'm not expecting an 8-year extension July 1, but obviously things could change. Maybe that's one reason why the Wild have hit the brakes with their UFAs. Who knows? I do think Quinn is extending. So if he was not extended before the season, I think it would be shocking. The one thing I would say is that, Cale Makar is up as well. So who goes first of the two of them? Do they play off each other, kind of the way that the whole Kaprizov, Eichel, Kaprizov started the domino last year? So do they work with, sort of weight on each other? We'll see. What's your thought on that, Anthony, on Quinn's?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to anybody since the season ended, but I've felt all along like it was really likely he was going to extend, maybe not 7 years, but extend for sure. It all just seems logical to do a shorter term extension. Seems like that's a good fit for both sides here, and I'd be really surprised if something didn't work out to 3-4 year type deal.
Yeah. Wild Boys 59 asks, hot takes on who else demands a trade this offseason. I could see Hellebuck being that guy. I would agree. The others would be Brady Tkachuk, Zach Werenski. It sure looks like Austin Matthews has decided that he's returning to Toronto. It's all kind of semantics too. Does Zach Werenski and Brady Tkachuk ask for trades, or do they do what Quinn Hughes and Matthew Tkachuk did and basically tell their respective teams that they are not going to be extending contracts well in advance of when they're eligible to extend contracts? That's the thing. The way that Dylan Larkin is getting ran through the mud here, you almost think they go that route where they don't look solely like the bad guy, Anthony, and ask for trades. You just say, hey, you know what? I'm probably not extending. I do think that's happening at some point for both those players. I could see Werenski and Tkachuk being on the move at some point in the next year.
Yeah, and I
or
mean,
more imminently.
I know we talked about this a couple shows ago where I just said I have some mild concerns for where the league's headed, where guys start to do this, but at the same time, if you're in the last year of your deal, you're actually doing the team a favor. If you say, "Hey, look, I'm not intending to re-sign here after this deal, so if you wanna make a move and get something, here's your chance to do that." I think that's different than a guy who's got multi-years left on a deal just saying, "Hey, I'd like to be traded."
Two more quick ones. Is the price for Barzell more or less than Larkin? I would assume they are similar. Again, I reported on the pod a couple of weeks ago that, from my understanding, Barzell is not available right now. And last one, what's wrong with waiting to see if Stramel, a second year of Urov, a full season of McCarron, Brink, Hunt, Haight will bring us? We've never had a young player like Stramel since Tuck. Do we really want to trade him away and regret it later? I mean, again, this is the like Anthony, this is where we're at with this franchise. They are not every time you do that, you're kicking it down the curve. I'm not saying that that's not the fruitful thing to do, but the goal is to win now. Their goal is to after these buyouts ended to take huge swings and try to win a cup in this small window. And it's just, I mean, they traded those other guys away because they were not Quinn Hughes yet. And I think it's going to be the same thing with Stramel, Urov, and all that stuff. I'm not saying that what he's saying doesn't make sense, but in the window that the Wild are at right now, that is not the way Bill Guerin is operating. His
Well,
operating are using these prospects as
yeah,
currency
I
to go
mean,
get other guys.
that's how these trades are made. That's why these trades are
Yeah.
made. And you go back to the Hughes trade, the Canucks are hoping that Zeke Buium turns into something like Quinn Hughes. The Wild
Yep.
are saying, "We'll give you more because we already have now we get Quinn Hughes." And not that Stramel's the same kind of player as Larkin, but that's the bet here is that,
Yep.
all right now, Dylan Larkin gives you a better chance to win than Urov and Stramel in your lineup. 4 years down the
Yep.
road, Urov and Stramel together, likely better than Dylan Larkin. And that's why the team makes the trade on the other side is they say, okay, we're willing to wait 2 to 3 years to see if then we're better at that point. But that's how all these trades are made. And you can't have both. You can't acquire the player that helps you now and keep the guys that help you 4 years from now. That just isn't how
Yeah.
it works.
What stinks the most, and when we talk about the Wild and their lack of prospects, is like I still do wonder if you could have gotten that Hughes trade done without throwing a Liam Ogren in there, and then at least you have one more prospect still. The fact that they gave up so much for David Juracek and then basically gave him away for Bobby Brink, the fact that Murat Huznadinov was essentially thrown away. If you still have these prospects, now you're not saying that you only have these couple little type of futures. You have 3 or 4 rather than 2. And I think that's the only thing that I think the Wild really should regret in the last couple of years is the amount they gave up for Juracek, but then they make that move and then they just give him away for Bobby Brink. They better hope Bobby Brink turns into something. The fact that they essentially threw away Murat Huznadinov, and now he's a top line winger in Boston. Whether he would be here or not it doesn't matter. It's the fact that they just gave him away, and that would be an extra prospect that they would still have here that they could use in one of these moves. And the fact that, we'll never know if they could have gotten this deal done for Ogren because to Bill Guerin's credit, is that he just didn't waste time. He didn't play games. He offered his best deal at the very beginning, but could Rossi, Boyum, and a first gotten it done without also throwing Ogren in there? We'll never know.
None of us are in those trade negotiations, so we don't
Yep.
know. I know there were a lot of rumors that the Wild were giving an extra piece compared to what other people offered, but we don't
Yep.
know if that's true, and we don't know if the deal gets done. If he doesn't make that offer, you just don't know. So he made the offer that he felt he had to make to get the deal
Yep.
done, and once the season was going, nobody can disagree with the fact that Quinn Hughes' presence in Minnesota changed the scope, changed the image, changed the feel that this team was a lot closer to winning than they were before the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really good podcast. Our next live show is June 23rd, 7 p.m. at Splitrocks. Anthony, hope to see you there before 6:59. Maybe
be
come
there.
like 5 minutes early and, say hi to some of the people that come out to these shows.
Oh, we always say hi after the show too, but
I know.
What day is that next week?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. All right, I'll be
Yeah.
there.
It's a week from today, right? No, then it's Wednesday. No. A week from today is 24th.
Week from
It is
yesterday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday night, I'll be there.
This is just a running theme that I never know the days of the week. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Tony Hoagland, our newest sponsor, my personal State Farm agent in Champlin. Welcome back to the show, Tony. Aquarius Home Services. This is your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, and we are both in our Aquarius Home Services studio right now. Onyx Maps, Lucy Nicotine Pouches, Stretch Labs, and Great Clips. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world